Hello, welcome back to the latest episode of Energonomics. This is your host, Richa Mishra. Everybody today is talking about LNG, and the Indian government has also set a very ambitious target of increasing the percentage of LNG mix in India's energy basket. But what are the challenges that still remain? Who better than my guest today, Dr. Anil Kumar Jain, Chairman of PNGRB. Dr. Jain is an old hand in the gas market. He also spearheaded the entire gas pricing dynamics when KG-D6 gas was found. So thank you, Anil, for sparing this time with us. We'll get straight to the point. And, suddenly everyone is again talking LNG. It is, of course, also being discussed as being on the trade table when India and US negotiations are going on, where only they know how far this is true. But you play a very significant role as far as India's LNG market is concerned. You also commissioned recently a Vision 2040 committee report, which talks about the challenges which we have. From you, what I immediately want to understand is, being so import dependent on LNG, is it right for India to shift to this fuel?
Yeah, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. This issue is often raised that we are not discovering new resources of gas in such large numbers that a shift away from, let's say, liquid fuels which we import to gas would enhance self-sufficiency. But then my point is that in the case of oil, the discoveries are in the same situation as of gas. So what is happening is that year after year, enhanced consumption of liquid products is enhancing our import dependency. Today, almost 87% of our petroleum products, are imported, in the sense imported as crude, and we process them. So that is the high level of import dependency. In the case of gas, the import dependency is around 50%. So it's actually a no-brainer to realize that a shift away from liquid fuel to gas, if it leads to higher import dependency from 50 to 60 to 70, it only reduces the import dependency in crude. Because natural gas is so fungible. There is no sector to which oil is used to which gas cannot be applied. So any rise in import in natural gas will reduce the pari passu, the import of crude. And on the other hand, the inherent advantages which natural gas offers, it is 20% less emission intensive as petroleum products. It is convenient. It's available on a tap. In homes, let's say if we were to shift away from LPG, then you don't need to cart those cylinders. And the molecule is 20% cheaper on calorific value basis.
I'm glad you brought the pricing bit. I'll come to it a little later. But prior to moving to pricing, if anyone today knows India's gas market as well, it is none other than you. You've been there in the petroleum ministry also. You've authored a book also. I mean, you know it like a back of your hand, if I may say so. So what I want to understand from you, in fact, before I move forward, you're the man who actually was behind the KG-D6 pricing when the whole narrative was being built, as to the entire formula also. So what I want to understand from you is, getting the fuel is one aspect, how we trade and how we get it. The second aspect is infrastructure. Now, there is a constant debate. One portion says we have enough infrastructure, our infrastructure are lying idle. During your period in petroleum industry, I remember East-West gas pipeline of Reliance had come, and now today we see a monopolistic situation which is mostly enjoyed by GAIL India. So, A, do we have challenge as far as infrastructure is concerned? B, is natural gas grid still a distant dream?
The infrastructure, to my mind, especially for a fuel which we presume will be imported in large numbers, because as I said, there's not the domestic exploration scene is not very vibrant. So I would include three segments to the infrastructure story. One is the LNG receiving terminals. The second is the natural gas trunk pipelines. And the third is the distribution network, which connects, the natural gas trunk pipelines to homes or to CNG stations, or let us say deliver gas to large power plants or large industries, for that matter, even steel, which may want to move to natural gas. Now, in the case of LNG receiving terminals, you're well aware that almost 52 million tons of capacity exists, and only 24, 25 is getting imported. And thankfully, the LNG terminals exist across the eastern seaboard and the western seaboard, which was not the scene until several years back. We only had them on the western seaboard. Now you have at Ennore, you have at Dhamra, and more are being planned even at Kakinada. The second is the trunk pipelines. I'll come to that last of all. The third being the distribution pipeline, which connect to the consumers. Now, we have bid away licenses to set up city gas distribution networks across the country. Today, 307, we call them geographical areas. The Indian landmass, even Leh, Ladakh, and Sikkim. We are about to give away Andaman as well. So across the mainland of India, you do have a designated entity which has committed, backed by performance bank guarantees to us, on what is the minimum distribution network they will lay, how many homes they will connect. In fact, they have committed to connect 12 crore homes with domestic PNG connections. So that's a matter of time, and that is our job. We will see to it that it comes up. Maybe a little delayed here and there, but that will come up. So we come to the NGPL, as we call it, the trunk pipelines. Now, I would grant that at present, when we look at the NGPL network, we see that most of it is underutilized. You mentioned of the East-West pipeline, which today is owned by PIL. That is underutilized. It's about 50 to 60% capacity utilization. When you take the integrated network of GAIL, that is also utilized around 74%, 75%. But what we don't discuss, which we should be discussing, is vast swaths of Indian land still, remain to be connected with these networks. So instead of taking, an overview on the sense that we have transmission capacity of, let us say, 400 MMS CMD, we're only consuming 180. So there is plentiful of untapped capacity. I would not agree with that. As I said, Peninsular India doesn't have a maze of NGPL. So that is a task which we are on the job. It's a bit difficult task because, after PNGRB took over this task of authorizing these pipelines, we do it on bidding basis. But the pipelines have to be financed by the companies on their balance sheets. And only when gas flows will they get tariffs, etc., etc. So as of now, unless and until there is an impetus, which I mentioned, of moving away from liquid fuel to natural gas, you don't send the right cues So we are noticing that in the last several years, no new major pipeline is being erected or awarded. So this connects with your second part of your question, that do we have adequate network of the national gas grid?
But before moving any forward, since we spoke about TNG and PNG, still CNG seems to be more popular than PNG. What is the reason for this? I mean, piped gas is any day more convenient, but then why PNG is actually not taking off the way it should?
Yeah, very pertinent question. And while the answer is simple, but getting it to happen is very difficult. In the case of CNG, the natural advantage, which I started this discussion with you by stating, that on calorific value basis, when a molecule of natural gas lands on the shores of India as LNG, it is 20% cheaper than the same energy which you might get from a crude oil molecule. So that advantage, in spite of so many levies on both these fuels, state VAT, it is not a part of GST, as you know, and pipeline tariffs and refining, etc., etc. That advantage plays out in the case of CNG versus diesel/petrol. The CNG vehicle is more efficient. It gives you more mileage, and there has been an impetus of the government as well. Automobile manufacturers have come forward. Diesel, at least in passenger vehicle segment, is slowly getting phased out. That is because of the Dieselgate and which started internationally, the scams on emissions from diesel vehicles, etc. So CNG is on a roll, and also assisted by the fact that the government has been contributing some of the APM gas, which is the gas which ONGC produces from the older fields, where they don't have to give any profit share to the government, and the government has a right to price it. So government prices it at a discount to the fields which have been given away under NELP and other regimes. So some of the gas which is sold as CNG is priced lower. So companies are making good amount of profit. IGL makes a 1,600 crore rupee PAT every year because it has an established market of Delhi. MGL in Mumbai also makes 12 to 1,400 crore rupees PAT because it has established market of Mumbai. So all is well over there. To my mind, even if going forward, because the APM gas is shrinking as a percentage of the overall CNG that they're selling because the CNG sales are going up, but APM allocation, in fact, government is diverting slowly away from that segment. I think that profit advantage will continue. Coming to DPNG, these recurrent schemes which successive governments have been promoting. To my mind, the initial impetus of the government under PMUY and various other schemes was very, very good for the country because we were able to wean away people from dirtier fuels used in cooking. And LPG, which was more of an urban fuel, has now become a dominant fuel. 33 crore connections all over the country is a very good, something to be proud of. But then that dynamics continues to still play out, and it is coming in the way of this parallel track of DPNG. Now, in the case of DPNG, even though we don't allow it to play against PMUY because that's a rural dominated poverty line, etc. In the case of DPNG at homes, we have only got a commitment of 12 crore connections. And there is a 20 crore, extant connections of LPG. So in a way, it doesn't militate against the welfare agenda of the government. But what happens is that LPG now is established in the minds of all governments and political parties as a welfare fuel. So the VAT levels are lesser in that. The it's under GST, only 5% GST on LPG. So the arbitrage, available to the city gas distributors over the LPG in the domestic sector is very small because of this pricing dynamics and the taxation delivered pricing mechanics. But the bigger factor is that the ROU charges, which are being charged by local bodies, let us say, for example, in Mumbai, the MGL complains that the Bombay Municipal Corporation charges almost 15,000 rupees for a new connection, averaging out if it cuts the road to get to people's homes or the pipelines they have to lay in the lanes and the state. Now, the high ROU charges are a bleed on these companies, number one. Number two, I will not absolve the CGD companies as well, because there it's a long play. If they have to connect a home, make this infrastructure investment, once connected, then this fuel is going to be your staple fuel for cooking next 40, 50 years until God knows some technology change happens. So they have to be content with the recovery of this cost over time. But the obsession, as I said, the huge PAT numbers I just shared with you. So there is all round. So the government impetus for the parallel track continues, and there is a natural advantage in pricing. There is obsession with profitability, and there is a high upfront cost obstruction due to high ROE. All these have combined. So that, I think, explains the whole story.
Yes, and it's very politically sensitive also. So, and states
I didn't say that.
States play their own little games. So, I want to come to the study then. What prompted you to, set up this committee and, commission a report like this? And as I was flipping through the report, I found that it talks mostly about transparency and marketing freedom, and a very, very sensitive issue also on the role of GAIL, the monopolistic situation. Your thoughts on what prompted you to commission this report? Second, on the whole issue of transparency, which they talk about. I mean, what kind of transparency are they looking at? And connected to a supplement to the transparency question, I would like to put is that should, like other gas things, PNGRB become the sole regulator for LNG as well, whether it's pricing or anything, the entire market dynamics. And finally, of course, the GAIL issue.
So these are as sensitive as the political aspect of the LPG. Now, what prompted me to put this committee in place? Prime Minister long back set forth the ambition to raise the share of gas in India's energy mix from the present 6% to 15%. And as you are aware that globally, the share of gas has for long been 24 to 25%. So to that extent, India is a laggard. Now, PNGRB inter alia is the principal body charged with that responsibility. We are essentially an infrastructure regulator, and we look after consumer interest. We look after entities' interest to make sure that they get adequate returns. We lay down safety parameters and the rest of it. Now, we have been bidding out pipelines. We have been bidding out the city gas distribution networks, and we review, we talk to state governments, encourage them to reduce the VAT on gas, etc., etc. Now, my feeling after spending some time here was that alone will not help this percentage consumption to go up to 15. Because my mandate is limited. Now, gas, if it has to rise, then the consuming sectors have to also promote gas. because urea and power traditionally all over the world are the largest consumers. So when you divide the whole thing, as you know so well, it is urea, it is power, it is transport, and it is in the building sector, which is cooking and which is heating, domestic heating in Europe, etc. Not so relevant for us. So I only handle the transport delivery and I do the domestic part. I don't do urea and power. So unless and until the Ministry of Fertilizer takes a call that we will use more and more amounts of domestically produced urea, which they did. So they converted the existing plants. But do we have a new agenda for more urea plants? Do we have an agenda to promote, you know very well, since your days, yeah, that used to cover almost 25 gigawatts of gas-based power plants. They're working at below PLF of 40%. That also only about 15 gigawatt works, 10 doesn't work. So there are lots of players. Then Environment Ministry. In the industry segment, if you want gas to grow, then the three advantages which I mentioned, the emission advantage, the pricing advantage, and the convenience advantage. Convenience advantage, we are already tapping in the domestic sector. Now, the pricing advantage, which has been played out in CNG, but it doesn't play out against coal in power sector. And so until unless the finance ministry through its, as I mentioned, LPG is 5% GST. But in the case of gas, many state governments are imposing 14%, 19%, 12% VAT. In fact, in states like Himachal and Uttarakhand, such a high VAT on natural gas, CNG, etc. It seems that they're penalizing people to shift to a cleaner fuel. So the idea was that for this whole orchestra or symphony to play out, there are many other actors over which I don't have a domain. So I wanted a committee. That is why if you see the constitution of the committee, I put CMD of NTPC because power sector is not with me. I put the CMD of GAIL, the principal marketer of gas. What are the difficulties that he faces in developing new markets? So this committee was trained essentially to look at 15% and not look at only PNGRB's own remit. And I had realized that they will come up with recommendations which will be beyond my remit to implement. But the idea was the Prime Minister's agenda is for everybody. Let me become the flag bearer and run with it. And I'm now I'm anyway sending the report to all the senior people in the government and telling them that a body of knowledge has been created. Please take a look. So that is number one. Number two, you come at the transparency issue, and then you wanted to talk about the GAILs and the LNG, the whole remit. Now, by transparency, let me clarify one thing. You spoke about PNGRB becoming a single regulator, and you mentioned pricing, etc., etc. Let me be very clear. We don't do pricing for anything. We only fix the tariff for the natural gas plant pipelines. That's a regulated sector. The idea is that just like airports, just like major ports where you have a Tampi, you have ERA for airports, these are regulated assets. If the government wants to tax, if you want to allow free market enterprise to play out, let it play out in the airline sector. You have a Vistara who was premium airline charging more, and you have a SpiceJet or the economy carrier, low-cost carrier. You have high-price ports which may offer value-added services. You have low ports. So let the shipping carriers, shipping companies, let the airlines, and let the molecule be priced higher. If GAIL can sell its molecule higher because it brings in efficiency, it brings in assured supplies, they know people don't want to trust a fly-by-night trader. But the pipeline should not become an entity for profiteering. Now, in the case of India, you see, when Bombay High was discovered in 1974, they discovered a whole lot of gas along with the oil, which is being produced together. That's the way nature works in geological stratas. So gas was being flared. And you are aware of the history that it was only in late 80s that GAIL was formed as a division of ONGC, and then the company became separate. So GAIL has done yeoman's work by laying trunk pipelines and introducing the gas-based economy in the country. So it was the marketer, it was the transporter, it took the risk, it brought in gas to India, etc., etc. Now, this GAIL was formed probably in late 80s, 87 or so. It's been nearly 40 years. Isn't it high time now to introduce market dynamics? Isn't it high time to separate the marketing and the transportation functions? Now, when I talk of transparency and when I don't fix the price, all I want to do is that transportation is my business. So if they are selling a bundled contract, if there is a tile maker who buys gas from them, GAIL promises to deliver the gas and also to source the gas from wherever in the world and give it to them. So the molecule price and the transportation is built into a contract where it has the capability of cross-subsidizing. So the committee has endorsed this view that to get to 15%, now the Indian gas market has also needs to evolve to a higher level of evolution. And you have fantastic examples of the Western world where their gas is traded. Like in coal, we have introduced a very fungible market. Now, Coal India is not the sole marketer. A trader from Chandni Chowk in Delhi or wherever can take a coal mine and sell coal to whoever who wants it. Why not gas? Why is this a holy cow? So the transparency I have in mind is in the marketing and the transportation functions. And as regards the LNG terminals are concerned, LNG terminals, by law, I can only register them, but I cannot regulate them. So there again, my contention is normally a regulator is brought in if there are some monopoly players and you want to protect the consumers from the monopoly action. It's the single pipeline entity owning lots of consumers, protection. Here is the case where LNG terminals are unregulated. There are plentiful of them. But yet out of the 24 million ton capacity which is being used, 19 is being consumed only in one terminal. So here is a novel case where there is no regulatory oversight, but there is a monopoly at play. So my take is that the act was written, our act of PNGRB in 2006. It kept the LNG terminals out of the common carrier as if it's a pipeline. But just like the airport and the bus stand, even an LNG terminal is an infra asset and needs to be regulated. So the act amendment is due. And it's high time that a view is taken whether if you want to raise the gas share in India's economy, we need more terminals. But more and more new terminals coming in, but the capacity is still going into one company and one company's terminals. So this is a market disincentive. I think I've covered the whole gambit of your question.
So it's very, as you rightly pointed out, we want it. But we are unable to right now take the challenge of the risk. And find an example which we always give is, look what we did to telecom. We just threw it open. And today you have everything. We did a little of it in aviation also. Airports privatization as well it happened. So yeah, why not it? It's a very significant point you have made, and thank you so much for spending this time with us. And we look forward to more such conversation.
Thank you very much.
This is all we have in this episode of Energonomics. If you have any thoughts, any comments, please do put it in the comments section below. Thank you.